Testing. Testing. Okay, the audio is good. Testing. Okay, the audio is good. Testing. The audio is good. I see someone is watching, one person. I started the live a little bit early. So we'll go ahead and wait like around 10 minutes. But I'll start with announcements like 5 minutes before. Yeah. Okay, let's see. I've been trying to see if I can play music at the beginning, but I know that there's like a copyright thing. So I'm gonna try to figure that out. Like, and if any of y'all know, like, can I play music and have this recorded and then this posted on YouTube without it being taken down? Or can I play music and then like, usually I see people on social media putting like, I do not own the rights to this music. But I just haven't played music because I'm not sure about this question, and I like don't want to record the whole lecture and then have it like taken down by YouTube, and then y'all don't have a lecture. And so yeah, I'm just like, okay, taking my time to figure it out. Yeah, I see. Okay, for watching, yay. Okay, so we have about 9 minutes left. Actually, your video, I think the video that you see lags about 30 seconds. And so I always, I have to like look at my Zoom. I have to look at my Zoom video in order to see like what's happening live to me, but then the YouTube is like lagged 30 seconds after. But I see 4 of you are now connected. Thank you for getting connected on a Tuesday. I hope your weekend was good. I hope you took some time to maybe relax a little bit and rest. Yesterday was Labor Day. There's a whole history behind Labor Day. And labor unions and fighting for the regular workday. And so that has its like interesting history. Um, but if folks that are watching have any initial questions or any initial concerns, just write it through the chat. Like I mentioned earlier, I really like the chat because it's like a space to interact with you folks. I feel like learning in an interactive way is just so much better. And although officially this class has no class time, right? Everything is available online and you can do it at your own pace. I do like this kind of model where this YouTube live is optional, and you can come and interact through the chat and ask questions if you can and if you're able to. If not, this video is available after through my YouTube channel, so you can watch it afterwards as many times as you want. Yeah, so I hope my audio is good. I think my audio is good. I had some chances to test it, but I did get a mic. Look at this mic. And someone told me to get like one of those circle lights for like, you know, lighting, because I only have this as lighting. I don't have good lighting in my house, so what I do is like open the windows. But the reason I got this was I wanted to make sure the audio was good so that you folks could clearly listen to me. Anyways, I'm just talking now. Let's see. Yeah. Yeah, it's Daniela, it's called a ring light. Yeah. For like selfies also. I heard it also makes your skin look just radiant. So maybe it's a good investment. Okay, so I'll go ahead and start with some announcements. There's 5 people connected. I am gonna go ahead and share my screen. And okay, so the first thing I wanted to go over, I think there was a couple of folks that were still confused about the Blackboard, and so I just wanted to like quickly repasar, like go through this part. So I know it's confusing. It confused me, but if you look at your left side, the gray area, right, and if you go down to where it says, see, all these modules are supplementary material. Okay, so our main focus for this class is this course materials tab. So these modules are supplementary material. This course materials, you click it, right? And then you have first, this is something I added last week, which is good because it tells you kind of the objectives, or not objectives, but like basically it's the rubric for the assignments, right? So you can see the standards. So if you get a 5, this is why. You know, if you get a 4, this is why. If you get a 3, exactly. etc. So this is kind of the standards for my grading. Like this is kind of like the logic behind how I grade. And really with the assignments, I just want to see y'all really interacting and reflecting and engaging with the material. And a 5 is like clearly like you read, you watched the lecture, you're reflecting on some themes, you're responding, and there's like extra critical thinking and reflection, right? Um, so that's the goal. That's the goal of the class. Remember, our mantra for the class is open to growth and learning, right? And so this is not just kind of like a multiple choice, kind of like based, answer these questions kind of based class. This class is really, really designed and like the goal for this class is to gain more of an appreciation and understanding for art, right? And so this means, to me, it doesn't mean, you know, just learning dates, just learning like what art pieces are famous and what, you know, it's like really in learning how to observe and reflect and see. Remember, developing our abilities to see, um, and also, yeah, our develop our abilities to think critically. Anyways, I went, whoo, okay. So then you scroll down and you see the materials for each week, right? So you see everything should be in this folder, and then you turn in your assignments where it says chapter 1 assignment, chapter 2 assignment, chapter 3 assignment. So this week is week 3. So if you click this week 3 materials folder, you will find all the materials for this week. Now, let me preface it to say that I did add supplementary materials this week because this week is about just like media and like the different ways in which artists make, right? The different materials, techniques, and so mediums. And so I added videos on printmaking so you can actually see like the process. So there's a printmaking, there's a lithography video. There's also a video with someone creating like a clay sculpture and then making a mold. There's also a video on Susan Lacey, whose art is very feminist, and she's been making art since the 70s. There's also a speech from Frederick Douglass, someone that appeared in a photograph towards the end of your text. There's a chapter 3 assignment. There's my lecture slides. So whatever I present during the lecture is in this folder also. And then your assignment for the week. So because our assignment for the week is, or because our learnings for the week is around media and medium and making and how artists make and the techniques and materials, you will be able to make something this week. So a little bit about your assignment this week. You will make something based on the materials you have. You no need to go buy expensive art materials, right? You can look around your house and see what you have. And depending on your time too, you can spend about 15 to 20 minutes making something, or you can, you know, if you feel like, oh, I've looked at the screen way too long, because all of us have been looking at the screen way too long, like, you know, you can choose to spend an hour, 2 hours or more making something. It's really up to you and the amount of time you have, right? So you're making something and then you're writing a journal entry of 250 words describing your process and the materials and just in general what you made. And really also grabbing from the vocab and the things you learned from the book. Try to incorporate lectures and your reading into this assignment as well. And then some of you have so some of the assignments that I've been grading are like under 250 words, and if it's significantly under 250 words, then I will probably start grading down. Right? So please make sure to keep to respond to the ¿cómo se dice? Respond to the questions, right? And then respond in the correct amount of text. Okay, so a few other announcements is, so I decided that my office hours are going to be from 12:30 to, or 12 to 2. Let me just double check. I have it written down somewhere. Yeah, so my office hours will be from 12:30 to 2. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen again so that you can see. So you should have received a link to something called Calendly. And when you press that link, you find that there's, okay, it says office hours, art appreciation with me, and then 30 minutes. So you will be able to sign up for office hours for a maximum amount of 30 minutes. So here you see a calendar, right? Next week is the 14th. This week we didn't have office hours because we had Labor Day on Monday. But if you want to schedule our office hours for Monday with me next week, you click the 14th, right? Or the next week, the 21st, right? So for example, you want to click the 14th for next week, and then you're like, I have time at 12:30. So you click 12:30, confirm, and then you write your email, your name, your email, and then anything in specific you want to talk about during the course, or about the course during the office hour meeting, and then you press schedule event. And then as soon as you schedule the event, I should receive an email saying, Juan wants to schedule a meeting at 12:30 on Monday. And so then we can get ready for that. And then this link, the link that I will share with you, is a Zoom link. So we will probably talk through Zoom, and we can just do audio, or we can do video. It's up to you. But this is just a space for you all to ask questions one-on-one. I know it's like, it can be overwhelming to ask questions when there's a lot of people or in a group. And so this is kind of allows for the space for you to have with me a more comfortable space where you can just talk about any concerns or any doubts or any questions that you have. So the reason I think I just need to, okay, awesome. So if folks can hear me, and if folks are well connected and are doing okay, just send me a thumbs up so I can see everyone's doing okay. And then I'm gonna go ahead and start my slideshow. I always forget which which one it is. Okay, cool. So welcome to Art Appreciation Week 3. So exciting, y'all. And then one last thing, I think, before starting our materials for this week, is you can register to vote already. The deadline to register to vote for this election. So this is primarily for presidential and some state election stuff, probably local also. But this is like the big presidential election that will happen November 3rd. So the last date to register is October 5th. If you are able to register and if you're able to vote in the United States, please take advantage of that privilege. It's a big privilege. I know a lot of community members who cannot vote because of their status. And so if you are able, if you are qualified to vote in this country, please take advantage. Also, this election is really important and super, I mean, all elections are important because you have a voice in choosing who our elected officials will be. And remember, elected officials represent us. They're supposed to be, right? They are supposed to be a representation of their communities. And so if there's an elected official, even locally, that you don't think represents our communities, then you get to voice that by voting against or for someone, right? So I would say that this election is super important also because there has been in the past 4 years a lot of policy, federal policy against people of color, against immigrants, against just, you know, allowing people to just exist. And so there's been a lot of hateful and a lot of policy that has affected especially the border. And this is your chance to kind of have a voice, right? And you have a voice already, and using art as a voice is so powerful as well. But this is just a way for you to voice that who you want representing our country on the federal level. Okay. And then early voting is from October 13th to October 30th. And then election day is, I think, November 3rd. So there's also some extra credit having to do with voting that I will explain next week. So next week we'll have someone from a Texas voting organization to kind of talk about a little bit about how you can register to vote if folks need help with that. And then, yeah, that's it for that. And okay, let's jump in. So, so exciting. Yeah, so we're going to be talking about media. The image in the middle is a press used for printmaking. You can see someone making ceramics on the right. And then on the left is kind of like a GIF that I really liked because it showed kind of like the basic kind of technique for like weaving, or one of the techniques, because there's many. And so you can start to kind of zoom in and all the intricacies of art making. So we'll go over kind of traditional like ways that people have been making art for like since forever, you know, and different techniques that have developed. And so yeah, let's start with drawing. So I pretty much follow the order of the book, like the way the book lays it out. But first is drawing, and it is such a like essential kind of foundational thing, although there are artists that don't draw, and that's completely fine, right? Like we express ourselves however we want. And so there's dry media. So you've heard of drawing with pencils. Charcoal is like actual like charcoal, like, you know, you use charcoal for like carne asadas or whatever, and like we can use charcoal to draw also, which is really cool. Chalk and pastels. Some of you might have interacted with some pastels, basically chalk, right? Something you use for whiteboard. similar to that. And so these are some of the materials that we use for drawing. Um, it always skips. Okay, and then this is an artist named Judith Baca, and she's based in California. Amazing. If you have time to look up her work, she is known for her murals. She has beautiful, amazing murals in LA and public art. This is a piece that was done in 1976 for the Cara exhibit, and it's a piece of Chicano art, and it's colored pencil on a mounted panel. So yeah, it's a drawing in colored pencil. And this, I'll tell you a little bit about this because I'm like, I really like Judith Baca, and I when I get excited, I'm like, yeah, let me tell them about this. But this depicts like a Pachuca, kind of a 1940s Pachuca on the right, and then a 1970s kind of Chola on the left. And then the middle is actually the image, it might seem like it's just a white space, but it's actually a mirror, right? So then when people go around the gallery, right, and then, or the space where it's being exhibited, you find yourself kind of in the middle of these two figures, right? And so the artist really wanted to talk about kind of this dichotomy of how women have been positioned. And so it's also in reference to this, like the good woman, bad woman kind of dichotomy, and what we call in Chicano art, and we might talk, we for sure will talk more about Chicano art later, but this dichotomy of like the virgin whore dichotomy that misogyny and sexism assigns to brown Latinx women, right? And so you're either like the Virgen de Guadalupe or like you're a whore, right? And you can't, like, it's like you either are this or that. And we'll talk about like different dichotomies and binaries too, because there's a really strong gender binary in society, right? That a lot of folks are like fighting to dismantle. It always skips. Okay, so the next is ink. So this is more of a wet media, and this is, I think, I forget if it's a Chinese or artist, but you can see that ink can be used in like, so this is all ink, right? And just look at the line work and like the different values. And you can see kind of like the leaves in the tree being like a little bit more watercolor, kind of watered down ink. And ink is just so like amazing because a lot of the calligraphy also is done with ink. And so you see like Chinese, Japanese, like calligraphy in ink. But yeah, this is an example of ink. And then we'll jump right into printmaking. Printmaking, honestly, y'all, okay, so I do two types of printmaking. And so the other ones I had to like look up a little bit more, but printmaking was really like a revolutionary kind of like innovation because it allowed for us to like reprint like music notes, right? Reprint books, like mass produced books, and texts. When we're talking about Posada from Mexico last week or the week before, right? Reproducing like newspapers and like political messaging, right? For political causes. And so this, like, I almost forgot like the invention of the printing press, and I will like get back to you on that. But this is a press, and it's like essential to like a lot of types of printmaking. And if you just take a close look at the GIF There's a bed, right? And then there's a roller. The two things on the top, like the circular, cylindrical kind of knobs on the top, are to arrange the pressure. So what happens is you have a plate, and then you have your paper, and then it goes under the circular roll, and there's pressure applied to it so that the ink on the plate will end up on the paper. And then the rolling thing on the right, I forget what that's called. It's kind of like a sailor wheel, is used to circulate that roll so that the paper and the plate go through. So we'll go over like 4 different types of printmaking. The first one is relief printmaking. So a lot of you, or some of you, might have seen this or done this already. You can use linoleum. So the example in the picture is linoleum, right? And what happens is everything that you want to appear like white, or just the paper, the color of the paper, you take out. That's why it's called relief printing, right? Because you're taking out all the negative and you're leaving the positive. So an example, I'll stop the, well, actually, I think you can still see my screen, right? Let me just stop this. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and look to see if anyone has questions so far. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay, so I just stopped sharing real quick so I can show you. So for example, this is one of my plates, right? And you can see that whatever I carved out is the negative, right? And then everything that's black is what's going to be printed. Okay. And so when I think I want to get into more detail, but I forget that I need to speed it up. Okay. Oh no, did I just? Okay, y'all, give me a second because I just exited my presentation. Okay. It can be a moment of reflection. It's like lagging a little bit for some reason. Okay, we were here. So then you use tools to carve out the linoleum. The cool thing about linoleum is like, okay, so like in construction, linoleum is used to like for flooring. And I know in Mexico, linoleum, that's how like people started printing on linoleum, by using like the flooring material. And you can also do relief printing with a woodcut. So you can do a woodcut plate, an MDF plate, and you draw on your plate and you start taking out the areas that to form an image. And so this is an example that I wanted to show y'all. It's from a compañero that also grew up in Laredo. He went to school with my sister and I. He's based in San Antonio. And you can see this is a linoleum cut, but look at how detailed it is. I mean, it's really not as simple as just like cutting out the negative, right? It's like creating also value through those cuts. Um, Creating light and value through those cuts, creating volume, dimension. I mean, this piece has perspective, right? And it's just so beautiful. He's so talented. Um, and so this is an example of a linoleum print. The other type of printmaking that that exists is, so you can print, so instead of using like a linoleum or like wood plates, your plate is like a metal plate, right? And so you either use like, you use a tool to like etch or engrave. And what you're doing, you can see on the left that there's the plate, right? And then you're like etching, engraving the image, right? And whatever you're etching is what's going to be printed. So you can see on the left the plate, right, and the drawing. And then on the right is what gets printed from that plate. So there's like chemicals involved, and there's a like slightly different process involved, right? This is actually a print, like a type of printmaking that I've never tried that I want to try. But basically what you draw is what's going to get printed. So this is also just like a kind of a moving image, kind of depicting, you know, the process of intaglio. And there's also, I included a video for y'all under the course materials folder, so you can see, get a like a more in-depth view of this type of printmaking. And also, like, if you see something and you like get excited about it and you want to try it, like go with your gut, because that's like how we get into things, you know, like and so maybe this is something that you want to try yourself. And then this is an example of an engraving from 1513. So you can see how old this type of printmaking and how long it's been around, right? And so this engraving is very, very, very detailed, and so you can see how much detail you can achieve with this type of printmaking, right? And look at all the values, and look at the space that's created. I mean, look at the very, very, very background, and the perspective. The buildings and the are very small compared to like the foreground, right, of the person on horseback. So just take a second to look at all the detail in this. And then lithography is also something I have never tried, and I'm like, I've been watching some videos on, and I am like, oh my gosh, I want to try that too. But basically, lithography is like on stone, so yeah, so you see that there's linoleum, there's woodcut, there's like metal. You can also use stone as a plate, right? And so there's also many chemicals involved in this, but the way you draw on the stone, so you can see here the stone and then the surface, is that you use a material that's specific to lithography. It's like a lithography pencil, and it has like a greasy element to it. And so when you draw, right, you would draw first, and then you add something, you add a chemical on top of it. And the chemical only adheres to the non-greasy part, right? So the chemical and the grease from the lithography utensil, it's like like in chemistry, right? They like don't go together, they don't respond to each other, right? And so whatever you drew is exposed, and so whenever you ink it, the ink doesn't go on the surface where the chemical adhered, but it goes to where the greasy line drawing is. So what ends up getting printed is your drawing, right? So you're drawing what's going to get printed. And then one of my favorites too, and this is how t-shirts are made, is screen printing. And you might have already like kind of interacted or seen screen printing live. If not, I recommend you watch some screen printing videos. But basically you have, you print out what's called a film positive. And so a film positive, and then you have something called a screen, and I'll show you a little bit here. This is a screen, what a screen looks like. And basically this is called like mesh. It's kind of like a fabric mesh material that's stretched out, right? It sounds like this. I like the sound. And then your film positive is whatever it's going to get printed. So you see the black, it says EST 2013, right? The circle that is like a blue black, that's what's going to get printed. So then we coat the screen with a photo emulsion, and it's a light sensitive emulsion, right? And so there's this whole process where we expose it. So we coat it first, we let it dry, and then we there's this like exposure unit that is used. So you would put your positive, imagine like a light box. Y'all have seen a light box, right? So there's the glass, the light is under. You place your film positive, which would be the EST 2000, right? And then you would place your screen on top, already with the photosensitive emulsion. You close the exposure unit. You let it expose a certain amount of time. Every exposure unit is different. And then you let it expose, right? You take it out. And what happens is the black blocked all the light, right? The black, you can see the image go to where the ink is being poured, right? So the black of the film blocked the light, and the rest of the emulsion kind of dried up, right? Was exposed. So this was exposed, this area was not. So you are able to wash off the non-exposed area, right? And from here you can see there's an image. It's a little dirty because it's not, it needs to be cleaned. But besides that, look at the image, right? You see where the ink is poured. So there's a squeegee that we use that I have somewhere, but I can't find. So you pour the ink here, on usually on top or on the bottom, and then you pull the squeegee, and essentially this image is going to get printed on whatever surface you have under. So a t-shirt, paper, etc. So that, I love screen printing, y'all. So any t-shirts that you have, that's the way it was printed. So you can see here more clearly, right? They have what is called like a screen octopus, a revolving kind of setup where there's like 4 or 5 screens. This is the ink, and that's the squeegee. So you can see the image that's going to get printed. That image, you can see it, right? And then the ink, what it does is that the ink passes through the fabric mesh. The emulsion, the photo emulsion that was exposed, right? The ink won't go through that. Only through what was not exposed. Cool. And then you can see an example of this in your book with Andy Warhol. Andy Warhol is a very interesting figure in art. And this is a screen print that he did of Marilyn Monroe, and it was kind of a comment on mass production. Okay, then we go to painting. What time is it? Oh my gosh. I feel like I always like talk a lot at the beginning and then I'm like rushing. But I won't go fast. So this is the painting. Something that I had mentioned to y'all last time is painting has pigment. It's like a blend of like pigment, right? Which comes from, historically it has come from like natural materials and elements and minerals. But now there's like artificial, right, pigment and coloring. Um, but it usually is a pigment plus a binder, right? So all these different types of paint have all in common a pigment, but a different kind of binder. So that's what we're going to talk about right now. But an example of just like pigment is the image you see in the middle. And you also see it in your book as a sand painting. And this is a sand painting, beautiful sand painting pigments that are used by the Navajo. It's a traditionally Navajo. And it is, you know, there's like figures, there's patterns made by these sand paintings. And usually after the ritual, it's like kind of swept, right? So it's like this like temporary artwork. But it is used for healing. It's used as a ritual and it's used during chanting and prayer. So it's a very sacred ritual. It's a combination of like crushed stone, charcoal, pollen. So look at all these like amazing colors that come like from nature, right? And then lastly, a lot of people think like, oh, well, there's this like common misconception that like native peoples and native tribes are from the past, but no, they're like present, and there's like all these amazing active native tribes around the US, around Mexico, South America. So really starting to see like where these the different kind of native peoples in different regions. So I added a map on the bottom where it says you see where Utah, Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico meet in the middle. So that area is Navajo Nation. So you folks know kind of the tribe and then where they are, um, where they reside. Cool. And then so there's different surfaces and supports for painting, right? So we traditionally, what do we think of? Like we think of the canvas, right? Like it's like, oh yeah, canvas, right? But there's so many different supports and surfaces, canvas being one of them. Artists historically, prehistorically, uh, have painted on stone, right? There's also clay vessels, which you see on the right, which is from 500 BCE. Remember, that's before Common Era. Um, Artists paint on plaster, artists paint with plaster, they paint on wood, they paint on paper, they paint on fabric or canvas or on found objects. And even on skin, like the image to the right on the bottom is a Chinese opera singer and they are painting on their face. So there's different materials. I honestly, like personally love found materials and found objects. And yeah, so this kind of tells you like what are the different things that you can paint on. So encaustic is kind of like an older form, but I think it's still used. I've never used it, but basically that's pigments plus hot beeswax. I don't know the process of that very much, but you can always like YouTube or Google that if you want more detail. The fresco is is also like, if you see like like the old kind of church paintings and like the chapel, like kind of like the ceiling paintings, a lot of that was done in fresco seco. I think Diego Rivera also painted his murals with fresco seco, but it's basically like paint applied to dry plaster wall. So there's plaster walls. Right now, we commonly often use drywall, right? Because it's also very like the most economic, right? A plaster wall has been used more in like historic buildings, and like currently it's more expensive. But fresco seco is, yeah, applied on dry plaster wall, and then bon fresco is that the plaster on the wall is still wet, and then the pigment, right? You have the paint, and then you have your wall, your plaster wall that is still wet. And so you're painting like that with like an active wet plaster wall. And so you can see that it like starts soaking into its surface. And it's a very like long lasting kind of paint. This is why a lot of the paintings that we see from like 16th 15th century, we still like, some of them are still like really good quality because of the technique, the process, that is the fresco. Yeah, it's very durable. Tempera, which is something that usually like tempera is used now. Well, actually, so tempera is basically like pigment plus egg yolk, traditionally, but a lot of the tempera that we see now in stores is just like kind of like an artificial kind of tempera, and it's used kind of like a student grade paint, and like a paint that like usually you see like children using, which is really useful because tempera comes off when like off clothing, like you can wash it and it comes off. So tempera is like that you get in a store is perfect if you have kids. um but traditionally it's pigment plus egg yolk, and then watercolor is pigment plus Arabic binder, which is like a natural water soluble glue. And that natural gum, it's like a natural gum too, is made out of hardened sap of various species of acacia tree. I think that's how you pronounce it. But you can see also that the binders are like made of like natural sap of trees, so you can start seeing like what these paints are like composed of for any people that are into like chemistry or like science. And then gouache is basically like a watercolor with like a white chalk kind of added to it, so it's more opaque. Like you see that watercolor is often very transparent, right? You can see that there's a lot of like beautiful transparent effects that you can do with watercolor. So gouache is like this like beautiful mix of like watercolor, plus you can make it like more opaque, maybe make it look a little bit like acrylic, because it does have that added element to it. And so this is an example of a watercolor plus a gouache. So you can see like the washes, right? And then you can see the more opaque areas. This is a Kenyan visual artist. And I looked at her work, it's amazing. And so a lot of like what I'm gendering, I'm not sure if her pronouns are she, but this is kind of a piece or like a series of pieces that really reflect kind of like the sensitivity of the woman body and like the politics, like she calls it sensitivity charts. So it's like I'm just gonna read like what they wrote, because it's just like I feel like this embodies really the piece. So the artist has described women as sensitivity charts Their bodies function as barometers, tracking the health or more often the sickness of any given society own body politic. So I see it kind of like this, like the woman's body is kind of like taking in the kind of socio-political climate of society, like what's happening. And honestly, I feel like that right now because so much shit is going down that I feel like I'm just like sucking up um all that all that desmadre. Oops. So yeah, this is just so like you zoom in a little bit, you see that there's washes, right? That you see that there's some transparency, this like watercolor quality to this piece, but you also see very like opaque parts of the piece, which makes just like this beautiful like coming together of watercolor and gouache. And then oil and acrylic. So this is like the most common, like one of the most common type of painting materials, right? Oil paint has been used since the 15th century. And this is how you see, we'll see next slide. But why the colors are still very durable and very intense and just like vivid, right? So oil paint is made up of pigment and then linseed oil. And the way to wash your paint, it's like you have to use a turpentine because it is oil based. You have to use a turpentine or like a mineral spirits. Versus acrylic is pigment plus polymer liquid binder. So synthetic polymer liquid binder, and it's water-based. So oil paint is oil-based, acrylic is water-based, and that's like the main difference between the two. Oil paint is very slow drying. So if you've like worked with just like oil house paint, right? Like oil exterior paint or oil-based paint for like painting your any furniture or stuff like that, you find that it has like a longer drying time, right? So with oil paint, with artist oil paint and that tradition, usually artists choose like oil versus acrylic. I'm more of a like an acrylic type of gal, but oil, because it's so slow drying, that allows you to like come back to the painting and work on and still work on some areas, right? Whereas acrylic, it's fast drying, so you kind of maybe work in layers. So the thing in the middle is like, or the words in the middle are techniques. So glazes are when you work layer by layer, and they're like kind of like a layering of these like transparent mixed colors, right? So this is a technique called glazing. And then alla prima, sorry, alla prima is more like maybe acrylic based, where you do your drawing on your canvas or on your surface, and then you paint everything kind of at the same time, and there's like really no layering involved. And then both of these surfaces require, so if you, for example, paint on a wood surface or you paint on a canvas surface, you have to prime it. So just like you have to prime, think about how house painting and painting walls. If you want to paint like a different color on your wall and it's like maybe a lighter color, you have to like prime it first, right, to change its color. So same thing with oil and paint. Oil paint and acrylic paint is you have to prime your surface first before. So this is an example of an oil paint, and look at how, I mean, this is a very, like, this person spent a lot of time on this. Like, it's very smooth, it's very blended. Look at how well the colors are blended together, right? There's no really sharp lines, like everything is blended. And so, yeah, oil again it allows for you to work on a painting, right? And then leave it and then come back to it and keep working on the same areas and achieve kind of blending. And so these paintings were also done in layers. And then you can see examples of acrylic painting. So Alla Prima is on the left, right, where this artist kind of drew very geometric shapes and then probably kind of painted in very carefully and very smoothly the different colors. And then on the right, you can see that there's different layers, right? But you can see that it's more of an acrylic because of, of the kind of line paint brush qualities to it, and all the layering as well. And so spray paint. So I'm going to pause a little bit and see if there's any questions so far. Okay. You see how it's like lagged. Okay. So I'm going to keep sharing. Yes. Present. Okay. So then we have spray paint, and then some of y'all have seen probably examples of spray paint. Graffiti is like this, like, still very controversial thing. I think it was more controversial before, but it started out really as like folks painting on public walls without approval, right? And so there's all this like art behind graffiti, and it being like a resistance medium, right? And then this is an example of like an artist that I love called, he calls himself El Mac, and he paints all these like beautiful portraits, and he's painted like all over the world and all over the country, and you can see, zoom in, that he has like a very particular style, right? You see like these like circles. You see that the larger kind of portrait is made up of these like smaller like circular kind of very like lines, right? Or sprays. And so this, yeah, this is just so beautiful. And it talks about the activism. Actually, I think this figure is someone that, it was a young girl that, so the Pope, I think, was visiting a certain location, and this young girl went up to him and gave him a letter. And the letter was talking about rights for undocumented people in the country. And so this artist painted her portrait on the wall. And then we go into fabrics, needlework, and weaving. So we see a beautiful example. This is called Renaissance Party, and it's from 1988. It's a quilt combined. I think it's like a multimedia piece also, but it's partly a quilt. And so, yeah, like it can include tapestries, quilts, rugs, embroidery, like whose grandma, whose mom, or like family member does embroidery. Like there's a lot of people that do embroidery here in Brownsville. Beautiful, right? And then you see the beautiful textiles. This comes from Mexico. I think it's around, if anyone knows and can correct me, please do. I totally accept being corrected. I think this is around the area of Oaxaca. But you can see, and then it's made with a telar. And just like, if you can Google like someone working the telar, like absolutely beautiful and so intricate and takes such a long amount of time. Also, when you go visit Mexico and people are selling textiles, especially the native people that are making it, please don't haggle down, and don't haggle at all, because these are pieces of work that takes such a long amount of time. And then these shapes and figures have been passed down to traditionally in these like native groups, right? So not only are they very intricate and very complex and special, but there's like a story being told through all the different symbols and figures. And then this is kind of like a woven piece from an artist from Ghana. and they use salvaged materials to make this. And so, and then I got a quote, I think, in the book that says, so this artist is a firm believer in creating artwork from any materials readily available in the environment. So recycled materials, materials that this artist finds around, this is a piece that has been woven with all those found materials. And it just creates such a amazing, you know, different textures and colors, and like blending also of colors right together. Beautiful. And then we get into sculpture. So basically there's like freestanding sculptures, like three-dimensional sculptures, and these are all examples that are in your book. So if you want to reference like the names of them, they're in your book. But freestanding is like a sculpture you can see, you can kind of walk around. It's three-dimensional. It's supposed to be seen with like all around, right, in different directions and angles. A relief sculpture, which you see in the bottom here, is like typically like on a wall, right, or like on a flat surface. It can be incorporated into architecture, right, where the relief, there's kind of a sculptural element to it, but it's like it relieves out, but there's like the back is not, there's no back. It's not supposed to be viewed in like a 360 kind of perspective. It's like kind of more of a frontal, right? Site specific are like 3D installation sculptures that are intended for our particular area space. It might be like outdoor space. It might be this, for example, Richard Serra he made this specifically for the Guggenheim Museum, which we looked at last week. The Guggenheim was like the cylindrical reinforced concrete building that we saw last week. So that is inside the Guggenheim, and kind of mirrors that outside architecture and also the inside architecture. So that is a very site-specific piece. There is a kinetic sculpture, which is like more of like there's movement in the sculpture. There's something that moves, for example, on the image to the right bottom. There's modeling and assembling, and there's also fabricated pieces. So this is an example, and I'll just play it. I do not have the rights for this video, just in case. But I'll play a little bit of it. It's a kinetic sculpture that moves with wind. So this is not powered by anything mechanic. It's moved by wind. And this artist has like a series of other kinetic sculptures that he has created. Amazing, right? Yeah, and then so we have, this is, for example, is called like relief, right? What we talked about before. It's like obviously part of an architectural space. It's sculptural, but it's like attached to like a wall, right? And then to the right, it's more like a freestanding sculpture. And this is like an Aztec sculpture, I think clay sculpture. And then of course there's like ceramics, right? There's like bowls, there's pots, different pottery that is used and is part of sculpture. And then this is a video also. I do not have the rights for this video. I do not own the rights. But this is a video that is also on your course materials tab that you can look through. But basically I like it because it shows like the artist making a sculpture. Sorry, I tried to like fast forward and it didn't work. Okay. So you can see that this person is using like an additive kind of technique, right? With some of the sculptures that you see that's like are ancient kind of Roman sculptures carved out of stone, that's like a reductive right? Because you're taking out stone in order to shape the figure. This is additive because you're adding clay in order to like mold the figure. And so if please watch that video because I was like really into it. And then there's assembling, right? These are like sculptural pieces that are made. Some of them are made, these are the Maasai women, and they're based in Kenya. Also, something that I want you all to take away from this course is like really looking at a map. Look at the global map. And I actually was trying to find like a map that showed, also had like a time lapse where it showed like before common area, after common area. But a lot of the maps that I saw were very focused on like the West. So it didn't show like the Americas. And so when you get a chance to just even look at Google Maps and look at where everything is, it's such a fun exercise. Not so you can memorize it, just to know like where things are at. So for example, Africa is a whole continent, y'all. It's a continent. People often talk about it like it's a country, and like no, it's a continent. So where in Africa are the Maasai women? They're based in Kenya. Okay, so you can see in the map, this is where Kenya is. It's more on the east. And so these are very intricate kind of beaded necklaces that are made by the Maasai women, and they kind of show their identity, their cultural identity. It's a reflection of their culture and their position in the village. They're very beautiful. And then this is another example of like assemblage, which is, these are the Baga, the Baga people. And you can see this is more in the West, right? West Africa. And so you can see it's like a mixed media piece. There's natural elements. There's like, that is carving into wood. So it's like a reductive kind of carving, right? And then there's a skirt made out of like local plant or raffia. So there are natural elements combined to make like this sculpture. So assemblage can also be like you're assembling kind of found materials or materials available in your area, right? For example, this wood is probably like from a local tree, right? So everything is like from local, from their area, from their like natural environment. And then you see installation in different ways. So this, like, there's been a lot of cathedrals built, like, you know, Catholicism was like really intense about like really converting people. So you see a lot of like this kind of style originated kind of in Europe, right, in the West, but you see a lot of it too in like Latin America. But anyways, so this is an example of like installation inside like an architectural cathedral, right? Because there is, it's called Ecstasy of Saint Teresa, and so you see here, right, the two sculptures, and then within this kind of arch area, right? And so you can start seeing that there's like installation incorporated into like this architectural structure, which is supposed to give like an illusion, right? A feeling of like of light and like kind of saintly holiness to it, right? So all these different elements. Look at there's a mural on the top too, right? So all these different elements like create this installation. And then installation work. This is an example that the first time I saw this, like without even knowing the artist, I was like instantly intrigued, because I was like, oh my gosh, they wrapped like the image on the right is a wrapping of a building in Berlin. And that entire thing is like wrapped in like silk fabric. And because I'm so into textiles, and I don't know, I was just like, this is amazing. And it's just like, it's a building wrapped. And so they actually had a lot of people visit, especially during the time where it was wrapped. So Claude, Cristo and Claude, they're a couple. They're a married couple. And I think one of them or both of them have passed away already, but they're a couple and they made these artworks together. And they're ephemeral. It's something that's called ephemeral, which is not like permanent, right? So this was only up for like a short amount of time. So it was the wrapping of this building. So you can start to see all the shapes, right? All the shapes created with this building, right? You can appreciate the building as like more of like a sculptural form, right? And so like, let's think of things that kind of that actually, I'll ask this question at the end because let's see, I am running a bit late. Okay, so right now I just want you to take some time to think of like, what are your initial emotions and reactions to these pieces, and then you can write it on the chat. Okay. And then the one on the left was also a temporary piece, and it was installed in Central Park in New York City. The artist talked about kind of like the bureaucratic process of like actually making this happen. I read that the mayor, because they were trying for a really long time to have this installed in Central Park just as a temporary kind of ephemeral piece, right? But the mayor was not for it, and like the city government was not for it. And then the mayor changed, like there was an election and there was a change in mayor, and then that new mayor was like, yeah, go for it. So you can see that like with public art, I personally think everything's political. Yes, everything's political. And like with these artists, they had to like jump all these bureaucratic hoops in order to like actually have this like as a temporary installation. So let's see. So the beauty of these pieces is that for them, they're ephemeral and they're temporary, and they say they said something like, I saw an interview and they said something like, everyone, like everything is owned, every like piece of land is owned, right? Like everything has an owner. But the thing that they like about these like temporary ephemeral pieces is that like no one's owning that, no one owns that. And then and it's only left up to our memory, right? And documentation. We remember these pieces through our memory and through the videos and documentation that were made about them. And then they also wrapped these like small islands by I think Florida. This is a performance. So when we talk about like how different artists make, right? We've talked about painting, we've talked about printmaking, we've talked about sculpture, we've talked about public art and temporary installations. Artists express through performance too. And this is a performance done by this artist who is a feminist, has been creating work since the 70s. Her name is Suzanne Lacey. There's also a video included in your course materials folder on her. But she was during that time, because this is a performance that I will briefly show to you. So this is outside of a city hall building in Los Angeles, I believe. And these performance artists arrived. Look at what they're wearing. They're getting out of a hearse. There was this whole performance with like a line of cars and then the hearse arriving to City Hall. And then these people that are kind of like wearing something under this black fabric, so it would create something more sculptural on their heads, right? But it looks kind of like a funeral, right? So her, with this performance, she was really talking about violence against women and how violence against women was portrayed in media, right? So around that time, there was like this violence of like this serial killer killing like many women, and then there was this just like debate around rape and like kind of like this time when rape was debated, and I feel like also it's debated now too, which is ridiculous. Like, yeah. So this was kind of like a response to the way media portrays and talks about women, right? And there's a lot of violence against women because there's not enough policy or kind of cultural like consciousness around misogyny, patriarchy, and violence against women. And so go ahead and watch this performance too. There's an interview with her on the folder slide. And then photography. So the last things is like kind of like these this is like an early kind of, or like late 19th century, right? Invention of photography. Your book also talks about like moving images as well. But photography is like a very powerful medium for artists. I also just wanted, I saw this in the book and I was like, oh my God, Frederick Douglass is like this amazing, like Black abolitionist movement leader, writer, figure, very important figure in Black history. I need to talk about him, but you can see this is a photograph of him. And he was in an abolitionist movement, like before the Civil War. He was a slave that escaped to the North. He, during slavery, also taught himself how to read and taught other people in slavery how to read. Back then, slaves learning how to read was illegal. Yes, that was a policy, folks. That was a law. This is why currently laws are not just, right? Especially for marginalized people. And so he has amazing, powerful writing. If you have time, there's also a video online with a speech that he made over the 4th of July. It's called What to the Slave is the 4th of July. And so if you have time to listen to that, very, very powerful figure, very important figure in Black history. Awesome. So this concludes the lecture. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to take questions. Maybe we have some time for discussion. Okay, so Antonio Martinez, that looks freaking cool. Yeah, I don't know which one you're talking about. Tell me more, Anthony. Lucas Mendez says, very nice. The left photo really got my interest with the position of the camera on the formation of the line of the hoops. Also, are you all talking about the installation? Lucas, are you talking about the installation on in Central Park? So yeah, this is the time to ask folks. Also, I'm very curious to see if anyone had any like visceral or any emotional reactions to any of the pieces they saw. Also, with the Claude and Christo pieces, with the installation pieces. Yeah. What was your kind of reaction with seeing this building wrapped in fabric and the colors and these islands wrapped in fabric and the vivid colors? Yes, Anthony, yes. So he has a series of like kinetic sculptures that are just amazing. I was able to go to an exhibit of his where it was like all his work, and it's pretty awesome. Like, yeah, and that that piece is like all movable on like by wind, which is amazing. um so go ahead and look him up. I think his name is, let's see, let me reference my Jan. I like get allergies, y'all. Okay. So his name is Theo Jansen. Hey, Milagros. So Milagros has the question of how long did it take for the building to be wrapped? I'm actually not sure. It probably took at least a couple of weeks. Or yeah, at least a couple of weeks. There's this video that I found online. It was actually like a 60 minutes video that I can also include in the course materials folder. That kind of gave like a little bit of process of how the building was wrapped. But I know that it was only around for like a couple weeks or a month. I do not know exact times, but I can go ahead and upload that video for you. Thank you, Milagros. Brenda says, I was amazed by the structure moving with the wind. Yes. So that's an example, y'all, of like art mixing with like engineering, mixing with like physics and like science, right? And so looking at this as like also like a multidisciplinary field um, is important. Does anyone else have any comments or questions? Okay, just to finalize, maybe one word. If you all folks can type in one word to describe kind of a feeling that you're experiencing right now, just one word. To kind of close the session while I just kind of reiterate some of my announcements. Um, so yeah, folks, so go ahead if you want to schedule office hours with me, do it through that link. And if you have any doubts or questions about Blackboard, email me. We will be having another live next Monday, regular time. 11 to 12. Your assignment is already uploaded on the folder. So you have your lecture, you have your reading, you have your assignment. There's also some required videos that you can watch, that you will watch and are available on Blackboard. And yeah, that's all for today. Next week we'll also have someone talk to us about how to register to vote. So I'm looking forward to next week. I hope you all have a beautiful week. Please enjoy the readings, enjoy the lectures. Really Google some people that like you were just like in awe by, right? And yeah, just also have fun with the material. Art is fun. And yeah, just I think that's it for me. Yeah, remember your assignments also. And yeah, have a great week. This is super fun. This is always super fun for me to talk about art and to share art with folks. So I am grateful for this space and for this platform. And okay. Sounds good. Thank you all. Thank you, Jack, Yaneidi, Lucas, Brenda, Milagros, Brenda, Lucas, Anthony. Thank you all for Daniela. Thank you all for participating. See you next time. Bye.